Good.
Just don't rock my chair.
Todd, can you check yours? We're good? We're good. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the study session of the Board of Education, our September study session. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag's at the back of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So this is a study session. I think we have a number of students here because we're going to be recognizing a color guard, among others, tonight, and we'll look forward to doing that fairly early in the meeting. Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Mary, second. Jim? All those in favor? Agenda is adopted. I'll say this, a study session is designed for the purpose of having administrative updates to the Board of Education. There are no public comments at study sessions. Residents may attend the next scheduled business meeting. That will be on Tuesday, October 13th, and or contact the board via boe@shenet.org with any comments or questions. All questions come into the superintendent's office, are shared with the board. Policy questions and concerns are typically answered by the board president. Operational questions, concerns are typically addressed by the superintendent. So we'll move to superintendent's communication.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Casey. Just three sort of preview for the board because we'll be having more information. One is just today we submitted an application at the encouragement of Assemblyman Tedesco, who thinks that we're, it's not guaranteed yet, but very likely will be a recipient of a grant through the Dormitory Authority of $100,000 to go towards the Chris Stewart Media Project. So we just submitted an application today. The reason I'm sharing with the board because there's a likelihood that it may come to a head before we have our next board meeting. So certainly don't want the board to read about it in the newspaper, so to speak. So it's pretty exciting that Mr. Tedesco identified Shen as a potential recipient of that. A second piece, too, that we're in the process of ongoing, and if you drive through the campus, the campus fields are utilized heavily all the time. This year, we made a conscious effort to shut down certain fields on campus because, quite frankly with you, they were just getting so bad out of shape from the constant utilization. And we're in the process now of getting some bids to redo certain fields, particularly the ones closest to the elementary school. And because of the generosity of the town and Supervisor Barrett, they have allowed us to use the commons. So our soccer teams, both boys and girls at the various levels, are using the commons now for practices, and other than the varsity field for the lower level games. So that's a process, and probably next board meeting we'll be bringing the board a RFP to act on to renovate 2 of those fields to have them ready for the following fall, because it's a whole year-long process that we go through with that. So just want to give the boards a heads up on that piece of it. Second piece that, again, just a news flash. I'm sure you saw in the news yesterday, the governor announced his commission on Common Core, and I think we're all optimistic that something will come about from this commission. This commission resembles the last commission that they looked at, supposed to look at mandate relief, and unfortunately that report wasn't so fruitful. So we're being optimistic that this report will be somewhat fruitful when we look at Common Core. I share that because as a district we have been doing a lot of things to ensure that what we do for our students here truly prepare them for the next level, be it next level in school or next level after Shenendehowa. So we're looking forward to the outcome of that piece as well. And the last update piece that, again, more information to come on this, but certainly want to give the board a preview. We have been working collaboratively with the Shenendehowa Education Foundation to form an alumni network. And it's a great partnership. The foundation committed funds to seed money, if you will, to get some things up and running. Mr. Ripchick has been in touch with various high school students to serve as volunteers. Mrs. DeFisciani has created a logo, and just want to show the board here a quick glimpse of that. Oh, you see it, and Mrs. DeFisciani does it. This is the Shen Alumni Network logo. There will be more to come. We'll be doing a much more formal press piece on it. We see this as a tremendous opportunity because if there's one thing that we have here, are tremendous alumni. We have a lot of great kids who graduate from high school and go on and do great things as adults. And so we certainly want to tap into and create an opportunity for them to network with each other. We get calls all the time about classes, want to do reunions, want to do this. And so we see this as an opportunity for many, many people on many, many fronts. But a key part of particularly having some of our high school students participating in doing this as a part of our internship type structure that Mr. Ripchick has formed at high school. So we're pretty excited about that piece as well. So again, just want to share some things that I'll be sharing more information with the board, but these things are happening, quite frankly, as we speak, and I certainly never want the board to feel as if they're not aware of certain things as we move forward. So I don't know if there are any questions on any of those things I just
I'd
shared.
like to make a comment just in terms of the commitment of the Education Foundation. As a collective, we've made a $30,000 commitment to this over a 3-year period of time, and not $10,000 a year if it requires more up front. In part because we think that whole alumni base is something that we need as a district and as the Education Foundation. We need to help support creation of an alumni network and alumni association. But one of the reasons that we're very interested in this is we think having the information and having the ability to stay in contact, especially with the social media these days and the way people communicate, we think it'll help support the whole focus through counseling through the high school on a career center thing, that we can do some of that follow-up. We'll have the information, we'll have the contact information, and what a beautiful thing to be able to use students to help in this process. And so it has unanimous support within the Education Foundation, and we just want people to know that this isn't a small investment. It's a big investment because we think it has giant payoff to us across the board going forward in a collaborative effort with the district. And in terms of the relationship, we are working on a memorandum of understanding between the Educational Foundation and the district in terms of the ownership of the data, privacy, all those things that, kind of follow on but are really important, and you want to make sure they're in place. So a lot of work has gone into that already, but we're really thrilled that this is an example of a partnership, just like the partnership that you talked about with the town of Clifton Park, with the use of fields. Yep. We've got each other's back, and that's, I think, the same message out of the Education Foundation.
And just for a plug, for those who might be listening, the foundation is always looking for great volunteers, and you don't necessarily have to be a Shen alumni to be a part of the Shen Foundation, Education Foundation Board. So I'm looking at this wonderful audience of people who are just gung-ho to be more involved in the district. That's an opportunity to be involved as well. And speaking of great people, I'm just going to transition to the presentations tonight. Mr. Snell will introduce the color guard members, but just a few quick comments on Scott Snell as a person. I've been here, Shen, 10 years, and I must say, quite frankly, even going back to my Mahonison days, where Mahonison also had a color guard, and I was aware of Scott Snell then. In fact, I used to come and say, who is that guy? When Mahonison used to come to Shen to perform in other places. But the thing I really want to say about him, hands down, he is the most enthusiastic person on behalf of students that I've ever met, hands down. I've never seen this guy not excited about the things that the young people who are participating in color guard, and they're committed. I mean, I always say, being a former athlete, there's time, but these kids put in time way beyond what most people can even imagine, starting at the youngest age in elementary school all through high school. But I say this kudos to Scott, because oftentimes people do a lot of things, a lot of great things, and sometimes they, quite frankly, they don't get their flowers when they could actually appreciate it. And so as Mr. Snell come forward and recognize members of the color guard team, I truly want to say, Scott, thank you for what you do, because your drive and motivation has turned this program into a nationally renowned program. And for that, part of the reason why we recognize and acknowledge you tonight, because of the great program your kids did this summer, and I want you to talk about that with the board as well. So with that, Scott, why don't you come forward and bring your crew with you, so to speak.
me get set up here. We should know how to make a formation word color guard. Don't anybody get directly behind me. I'm taller. Well, Brittany, you're a little taller. Split. Kendra that way. There we go. Okay. First of all, Dr. Robinson, thank you so much for your extremely kind words. I'm starting my 20th year here at Shenendehowa as the director of the program. When I started here 20 years ago, we had about 17 kids in the program. And as of today, we have 71 active students in grades 6 through 12. We have an intramural program that we have for our 5th graders. And 3 years ago, we started a program for students with special needs. And so the program has expanded exponentially over the years. And it's been through most of the support of the school district. And of course, all those parents back there with cameras who spend countless hours fundraising and moving the stuff from point A to point B. Who I have behind me today is members of our varsity program, our highest level program. These students last year, we traveled to the World Championships every year in Dayton, Ohio, where they compete against about 40 other teams from all across the country. Last year, they had the great privilege of coming in 8th place out of those 40, so we made the top 15, which is our ultimate goal. But the bigger accomplishment for us is that we were voted fan favorite for the second year in a row. So what happens is at the end of a performance, there's a little thing that comes up and says, please text if this is your fan favorite. So all the audience members that are in the audience, 2 years in a row, they were named the fan favorite show for their class. So that's a big accomplishment. First guard ever in color guard history at Nationals to be fan favorite 2 years in a row. And we've come up with a show idea this year. Maybe we're going to go 3-peat. We'll see what we can do here. The major accomplishment for this organization last year not only was their continued success, but was the fact that they were invited to participate in a first ever program. David Burns from the Talking Heads, which unfortunately none of them know who he was. Some of you that are more my age know who Talking Heads were and who David Burns was. But he got involved in color guard about 6 years ago. Somebody used a piece of his music and he was brought to the community of color guard and he'd never seen it before. And he was so fascinated with it that he decided he wanted to do a project. So what he did is he selected 10 color guards from all over the country to participate. And what they did is they paired us with nationally renowned musical artists. Nelly Furtado, and we had Lucius was our team, and we had St. Vincent, and we had David himself was one of the composers. And they composed an original piece of music that the kids then fit into the show that we were doing. And then we went on tour. We went and did 2 shows in Toronto at the Air Canada Centre with the other 9 teams. So it was about a 2-hour concert, full 15-piece live band. The artists were there. They performed live right along with the kids. So we did we did 2 concerts in Toronto for about 5,000 people each night. And then we did 2 concerts at the Barclays Center in New York City, which was about 10,000 each of the 2 nights. And we were chosen to be the lead-off team, so we opened the show each night. And then they did a finale with all 300 performers. So it's never been done in our activity before. David said he won't do it again. But it was amazing. The students were written up in Rolling Stone magazine. They were written up in the New York Times. There were reviews all across the country. There were online reviews, and I just read an article the other day that people are still talking about it. We were named, the concert was named the top 3 most coolest things that don't have to do with the music industry, I guess is what they called it. So part of their sacrifice was they extended their season for 2 months, and they basically had to relearn the show. So for them to experience that, they had to practice all the way through their downtime and all the way through finals and everything. So they put in a lot of efforts, and for that I thank them for all that they give to this activity. But it was an amazing experience for them, and it was great for the district, obviously, to be recognized at the level that we were picked as one of the few color guards in the country to participate. We were one of only 3 high schools. Everybody else was college age and higher, so there were only 3 high schools selected to participate in this activity. So, so we're a busy group. You can see us Friday night at homecoming. I'll give a little plug for homecoming Friday night. So, and then we'll start our winter season, January 23rd. We'll have the home show. So we're always here and we're always around the campus.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So we have a certificate. You've gotten so much recognition that I feel a little guilty about this, but whoever wrote this decided that we should have an alliteration contest here, especially at one part. You'll know where I get to that. So all the things that Scott talked about, recognized in here, just in recognition of a stellar season and collaborative performances. I think one of the things that Oliver referred to is the amount of time that people underestimate how much time goes into this and how much time it impacts studies and everything else along the way. And as a board, we've really decided that looking forward, this year and looking forward, we need to recognize students in every place that they're performing. And so that's what this attempts to do. But I do want to read this one part that's in the performances were featured in Rolling Stone magazine, as you said. And then in parentheses it says, and this is the one, they want to see if I can get this out or not. The opening number saw New York's Shenendehowa High School wielding color guard traditional saber props in sinister tribute to Alfred Hitchcock, with rotating cylindrical platforms serving as crime scene shower stalls. So
Very good. Very good. I didn't write that, but that was very good.
I think we'll want to see that some night here. And so in
It's on YouTube.
Yeah,
We're
there we
available
go.
on YouTube.
We're probably better off going there than we are going
Yes.
out. So in recognition of the innovative routines and exemplary spirit, we commend all who have participated. We thank you on behalf of our school. You make us proud.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're so happy to be part of it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Listen, yeah. Nope.
I was going through a handshake. Thank you very much. Thank you, parents. Stop next time. See you Friday.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And Scott, as you're leaving, I know that we don't want to leave out the parents, because as much of a commitment as this is for our students, the hours, the odd hours, the oftentimes coming to this campus, they must feel like and other places, they must feel like they need a taxi light on top of their car, right? Yeah. So thank you all.
I'm going to park my RV in the parking lot because
Thank you.
it will save me some time.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. To continue on as a part of our study session, we have 4 plans that we want to provide the board an overview. And overview is there for a reason, because we're not necessarily going to go into every detail of the plans themselves. The board, you have copies of the detailed plans, and so the objective today is to provide a broad overview. And we have the technology integration plan, that would be Dr. Wood and Mr. McDermott. We have the PD plan, would have been a combination of Dr. Wood and Joe Bush, but Joe is not here tonight, so Dr. Wood would take the lead on that. AIS RTI plan, I'm sorry, and I forgot, with the technology plan, we have Gail and John, our lead teachers, will also be engaged in the technology plan. AIS RTI would be a combination of Mrs. Mallard and Dr. Wood to some degree, and then the special education plan will be Mrs. Mallard, so just to kind of set the table on the presentation. So the board is also asked to approve the plans, and typically I try not to present and approve. Quite frankly, if the changes were dramatic or significant, we wouldn't have done that. So since they are, that's the reason why, just to kind of give you some backdrop in terms, because we're not asking for a lot of dramatic changes in these plans from last year's approved version versus this year's approved version. So we want to make sure that's clear for those action items. So Dr. Wood.
So the graphic displayed provides an overview of our technology integration here in Shenendehowa. I think it's important, when we look through the plan and we try to pull out the highlights, what really struck us as we were going through the technology integration plan is the interdependence and the interworking of 3 primary areas in that plan. And that's the infrastructure and the need for a robust infrastructure, how we're going to integrate everything that we do in terms of hardware into the learning environment, and then how we're going to be involving stakeholders and how we do involve stakeholders in the decision and plans for moving forward. And so each, we've got Ken and John and Gail here who will be highlighting this evening their pieces of the technology plan and how they contribute to the larger whole.
Good evening. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm going to just speak to you a little bit about some of the things that we've been working on with respect to the infrastructure. I pretty much see this as we need to lay the groundwork to make sure that we have a network that can support the rapid proliferation of mobile devices that we've had. If you see, at the elementary school, we're up to about almost 1,000 iPads in the middle school or in the elementary schools. We're just over 1,600 Chromebooks in the middle school at this point, and about 860 Chromebooks in the high school. That's on top of the 3,500 other devices that we've been maintaining over the years. So in order to make sure that we can support that kind of traffic and with the addition of the wireless network, we have been making some upgrades. Probably one of the biggest and most significant things with respect to the network is this past year we put out an RFP, as you know, because you approved it, for a dark fiber project, which allowed us to rent fiber optic connection out to our remote sites. In effect, what that does is that makes every building in the district on a level playing ground with everyone else. So we currently have a 10 gigabit connection out to all those sites, which is a huge, huge improvement because those outlying schools, especially Octane and Chango, were really at a disadvantage. We had a 100 megabit connection there. We have held steady this year at a 400 megabit internet connection. Our analysis shows us that at this point that's sufficient, but we can scale up to a gigabit at any point in time. We just need to make the call. We have addressed some coverage gaps in the wireless network. We've done a lot of configuration with our management software to make sure that we have alerts when there are difficulties across the district. And we continue to work with Kathy Wetmoore's office to build out the security system on our network. A lot of this is built, we also do an awful lot through our obsolescence plan. We've been refreshing a number of PCs. I think we did about 320 this year. We started obsolescence on iPads this year. This is the first year that we've had to do that. We refreshed about 300 devices. So we've got this plan that we work through and make sure that we have fresh gear to make sure that we can support those things that Gail and John are going to talk about. So,
Ken, what do we do with the old iPads or old computers? Do we donate those?
that's a good question. The old computers, most of those go back to NARIC. By the time we're done with them, some folks have taken them, but they go back to NARIC. They go out to the consortium, and other schools can claim them if they would like. The iPads, actually, we were able to trade in this year. We got a $65 credit per device. In fact, we just got a check the other day for the trade-in value. So, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you. I'll throw it over to Gail.
Hi, I'm Gail Petrofessa, one of the district's lead teachers for instructional technology, and mobile devices and all the things that Ken spoke about are wonderful, but they're only good when teachers have adequate training and professional development opportunities. And I believe Shen can really pride itself on what we're able to provide both in a proactive and responsive way for educational technology PD. As we all know, it's one thing to schedule a bunch of classes, but it's something altogether different to be able to provide opportunities that teachers find really productive and relevant to their time in the classroom. And although numbers don't tell the whole story, I'm proud of the fact that over 200 participants attended educational technology workshops in the Summer Academy, and that included about 50 K-5 teachers who received initial training for integrating iPads, and to date, about 150 of our elementary teachers have received that training and are using classroom iPads. We're also expecting strong participation for our fall PD lineup, which will include at least 11 Google-related workshops, which John often does, They're always in high demand. And finally, it's important to note that true instructional technology integration requires more than just access to devices and some scheduled workshops. I truly believe that it's the on-demand responsiveness that we're able to provide that really makes a difference. And I'll give a small example. 6 o'clock this evening, I was sitting, and this is unusual, but I'm at my desk because I was staying late for the board meeting, and I get a call from Shattucon. We have an emergency. It's our open house tonight, and the technology's not working. What can you do? And I was able to run over there with a laptop, and they did what they needed to do. But that's a little bit of a stretch, but I'd like to believe that that's what we aim to do. When teachers need the support, we're able to provide it in a responsive way, not just necessarily with scheduled workshops a few times a month. Thank you.
Gail, can I ask a question? And this relates to what Ken referred to as well. So in the elementary school, 60% of the classrooms have iPads in them. What's the limit there? Is the limit, is a limiting factor the people who haven't been trained yet, or people who aren't comfortable with it, or lack of devices?
The way we've done a lot of, some not all, but some of the technology in the district, including the mobile devices, is to give them out based on an application process.
Sure.
So that assures that the teacher is willing to, really wants to embrace it and has some ideas about how to do that and will attend training. And so in every case, as many devices as was budgeted, we were able to put out. And I think we've met the demand, but the demand continues. So, initially not everyone is interested, but once my neighbors have it, then more and more want it. So we'll be putting out a small number of devices this fall, but I think we're going to get a lot more teachers interested, so.
Thank you.
Could I just say something about the scheduled training? Because I think you're right about the on-demand nature, just by virtue of people's lives, if for no other reason, that it's great to be able to do that when it's convenient for the teacher who's learning it. But I just noticed in the scheduling, there's a really nice balance of programs that are not offered during school times, and I just really appreciate the ability for the teachers to be able to stay in their classrooms with their students and get training that they need. It doesn't come at the expense of instructional time, and I just wanted to say thank you for doing some of that anyway.
Yeah, that's great. And now John will talk about the stakeholder.
Additionally, we're part of model schools too. So the model schools program offers classes in surrounding districts that Shen teachers can go to and take after school and on weekends too. So it's a little bit more. Yeah, I probably should step closer to the mic, although I've been told I'm plenty loud on more than one occasion. My part is talking about the District Instructional Technology Integration Committee. It's the acronym DITIC, which you've probably heard. It's a group of teachers, parents, board members, administrators that kind of guide the district with as far as what's coming up in technology, what we might want to go to, what we might want to do, what we want to see in the classrooms 3 years from now, 5 years from now, et cetera. Every year, DITIC does a survey of staff and of students to find out how things are going, what they see as a plus, what they see as a minus, et cetera. Last year, we had 2,500 almost middle school students and high school students complete the survey. So it's a large portion. Yeah, it's a large portion. All done electronically, of course. All tabulated electronically, of course. And we had, I don't know what the teacher number was, 125 elementary and 133 middle school, high school. So a good portion of the staff complete the survey too. We get different results back every year. Sometimes we get some surprises. Sometimes it's tracks right where we were. Last year, one of the things that surprised me was the percentage of students who said they would like to use their own devices more. It was 61%. So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about at DITIC tomorrow, actually, is how to better integrate and encourage bring your own device within the schools and the classrooms. So there's a whole set of statistics there. I'm not going to go through all of them point by point. But what we try to do is find out what the pulse is of our students so that we can go where their interests are, but also educationally make the technology relevant to their education. So as Gail and Elizabeth and Ken said, we have had a tremendous explosion of devices that we've added to the classroom over the last couple of years. The percentage of students and teachers using Google apps in the classroom after 1 year is amazing. So much so that we were kind of joking about it, Brian and I, a few minutes ago, but that Google's having a hard time keeping up with all the demand, not just at Shen, but all over with the change. So it's a very productive tool for students and staff to use.
Bob, you're on that committee, have anything?
Yeah, I've been very impressed with the survey, the level of commitment, the level of discussion that comes through. I do want to jump over to a question, because one of the things I saw the last 2 years, getting the Discovery digital content into middle school science, I think that is something that we can really take a lot of pride in. And it really came from the teachers really saying, hey, this is a great version of a digital textbook. But we haven't seen that for a lot of other subjects. And what I'm hearing is a lot of parents are saying, for math, I've learned to use Khan Academy. So the question is, as all these things that are very fragmented, apps, Khan Academy stuff, are we seeing the demise of the classic textbook, and should we be thinking about that over the next couple of years? Is that something we should be positioning our thinking towards?
Well, we are definitely seeing less of a quote-unquote need from teachers to have a full, complete textbook where they prefer to piece together resources that they think are more timely or more specific to the needs of their students and what they're teaching. I will say, however, there are some still very good products on the market that, as you point out, are much more comprehensive and still feel modern. They don't feel like the 200-page textbook that we're going to be committed to for 12 years or something. And Discovery does have more products. In fact, I was learning more about some of the products yesterday. I think what I continue to be most interested in conversations with academic administrators and teachers is where we can have those instructional videos that actually match the content. I know Rose Barrow was looking into something in terms of upgrades that are available for Go Math. Discovery has some products in some other departments and other subject areas as well that we will be taking a look at, because it is challenging for people to go here and go here and go here. And where we see products that help us kind of provide solutions to teachers, students, and parents, and it's collected in one, that's the direction we will look to go.
Okay.
Great, thank
So,
you very
again,
much.
thank you very much.
Good
And,
work.
Yes, yes. Really, and I do want to say thank you to Ken, to all of IMS. Brian Gidley is here this evening. He is a really instrumental part of IMS. John and Gail, tremendous professional development to our teachers, and all of the members of DIDIC who give of their time to really move forward the integration of technology in the district.
So we're related because, as Gail alluded to, the on-demand professional development is such a critical part of it, and we have a tremendous history here as a school district, investing in staff, tremendous history. And again, just kind of a quick kind of put this in context, I mentioned Scott Snow when I was in Mahonison coming here for Color Guard. I remember coming here as superintendent to Shen's Professional Development Center because there was one of the few school districts, it's still very much one of the few school districts, that actually had a whole center dedicated only to professional development. And so this speaks to the continued commitment of the district to ensure that our staff, be it instructional, administrative, or non-instructional, receive support in terms of doing what they're doing. And you hear some more specifics with Elizabeth and Anna here in a second, but the context is important because this is not new. It's not our first rodeo, but it's a rodeo that every time we're reinventing what we're doing and doing in different ways, and certainly technology has influenced that quite a bit as we move forward. So, and I failed to introduce Mrs. Sugarman earlier, but Anna Sugarman, who's been here through the whole transition over the years, certainly will have a lot to say as we make the presentation.
So much like with the technology plan, later on the agenda, you'll also be asked to approve the professional development plan, which is an annual submission to the state. The graphic really provides just a general overview of the areas we are highlighting for professional development, and as I'm sure you were able to see, the professional development plan is much more detailed in terms of the supports that we would provide, not just teachers, but really all staff across the district to ensure that we are able to accomplish our district goals. And that's the most important linkage, that PD comes from, and all these ideas, we don't sit around and dream up as a separate part. It really flows directly from the district goals document. And there's a great deal of thought as we are coming up with what our goals are, is how we are going to help support the larger network of people working in the district to achieve these goals on behalf of students. And so with that, I turn it over to Mrs. Sugarman, who will provide really just a quick overview of some of the professional development we're doing primarily for teachers this year, but also for staff in general to support the work of the district goals.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you. And I just was reading today a spiritual thing, as I usually do every day, and I just thought this was really so apropos for us. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And it's by Dan Millman. If you focus on the same results, you will never change. A popular truism says that the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. If you focus on change, you will get change. Always remember, your focus determines your reality. So change is not an easy thing, but the word innovation represents change. We're constantly looking for new innovation. And as much as the technology department has shifted dramatically, the technology in the world has changed our world. Even in the last 10 years, I was remembering the other day how in gifted education, we used to think that things offered by Johns Hopkins University that came on a disc in the mail, a CD, were a wonderful way to get those kids accelerated material. It's unbelievable what's at their fingertips in these times. So with that in mind, just taking a look at some of the things that we're doing, I'm hoping you've had time to look at the professional development plan. There's nothing that's really new to the district goals in that we've been trying to maintain the same focus over the last few years and just go deeper. So curriculum development with the curriculum mapping will go deeper in that we're looking more for that internal alignment and consistency within our curriculum maps. And what partners with that is all the training that we had last year in assessment practices with the Teaching to the Core grant. So we're looking, like tomorrow morning I'll be working with the technology department and Mr. McDermott and looking actually at test data from last year for the final exams and looking at the item analysis to check and see if there are too many items that are too easy, if there's difficulty, that type of thing. So that's just an example of that curriculum development with curriculum mapping that we'll be doing this year, going deeper. And Dr. Wood had a big goal in that process last year of having a gold star assessment development practice, and she has shared that with all the academic administrators, and that's what we're striving this year to start to put into place with the teachers, looking at what gold star assessment looks like. Instructional technology, I think you got a lot from the last piece. The eDoctrina and Apperson will also help us with the assessment practices to look at student results and immediately get the results and look at how we can change what we're doing in the classroom with instruction. That's a big push this year. And then I know Dr. Wood is doing the piece on best practices with homework. We've had some discussion about grading and homework and how that works for children and doesn't work for children in some instances. One of the things I'm really excited about is studying learning. So last year with the teaching channel that we piloted in the mentor program, it was just amazing. I did this series of going in for 15 minutes to talk to the new teacher and say, what would you like me to film? It's either going to be student behavior, engagement, attitude, or achievement. And then them telling me when they wanted me to come in and then film. And then I went in for another 15-minute period, of a class period at their choice. And I filmed children. I walked around with the iPad like this, filming kids and what they were working on. Not the teacher, but how were students in a chemistry class preparing to do a review for exam? What tools were they using around them to work with, so we could watch what engagement was going on and analyze that. So then I would do a 15-minute debrief with them, and actually we looked at the film, and I said, what do you see? And some profound things came from it. So we're going to be continuing that this year, and hopefully we're going to have pilot groups across the district with studying, learning, using video in the classroom. It is one of the best forms of professional development when you watch what happens. So that's that piece. And I'm going to leave the rest there, I think, alone. And I think you're probably familiar with what's going on with the legislation with E&L. And we have to have co-teaching with E&L in the classroom. We had a lot of training on that. We're going to keep going with that. And, this other piece of the human resources, that's us. And so we have that training for Danielson continues to go on with the new teachers that are coming in. And this other piece of culturally responsive practices with Rachel Stead, she's done a lot of work with that, and Lisa Kissinger, they've kind of taken the charge on that. That goes along with the E&L piece. And the new teacher induction at Dr. Wood's request, this summer we worked to devise a chart of all the dates for 5 different areas: certification, teachers new to district who are professionally or permanently certified, what their process would be for induction, teachers in the mentor program, what their process would be, classroom teachers that are new to the district in math and science, we give content training specific to their needs, and then what Dawn Flood does at the high school. So it's all coordinated, and so we're not overlapping. That was her desire, and it's actually part of the goals, and she kind of got in there before time, so we're grateful for that. And we did put in the organizational culture, the operational support, and budget and resources, because without that, we can't do anything. The budget piece that we do with grant writing really helps support a lot of the work that we do through professional development. And also, we're moving into the WinCap system, too, just like everyone else, so we're all in the process of learning that. And the operational support, the world is really swiftly changing with the technology, and the boxes that we have for classrooms are not necessarily the best way for kids to get at that work, where they're going to be working in pods, or you'll see it at the college, or even at the high school, at High School East, you'll see how they group themselves in the cafeteria. It's not in a square. So as you move forward with that, we need to think about how can we facilitate learning for teachers, administrators, and students together.
Thank you. And you can see our professional development is led by an innovative thinker who's very enthusiastic about the work and really helps us to manage a lot of different pieces of the professional development plan. Thank you, Mrs. Sugarman.
Let me just add, any questions or comments, Bob?
What are the teachers really asking for, and what are like academic administrators really asking for? Two different groups, but what are people saying they want more of?
That's a great question. We get a huge response for the technology because that is something that it's not necessarily intuitive at this point, and if they go to training, they walk away with a great deal. We also allow our data to drive some of what we do. As you're aware, we look at the APPR observation scores and then provide offerings there. We also, out of Mrs. Sugarman's office, are able to be responsive in terms of what teachers are looking for. We are able to turn around and provide some element of support.
Summits.
Right, and even, our academic administrators, that's such a great point, thank you. Kathleen Strangis, Rose Barra have for the last 3 years led elementary summits where all of the second grade teachers from across the district come together for a day and get very specific training on new instructional materials, on any sort of review of data and what the data is showing us, on more innovative practice, a wide range of inter-rater reliability on the assessment or the administration of the Fontes and Pinnell assessment, but changes made to the curriculum maps. So academic administrators are also able to be responsive based on what they see as needs, either through review of student performance data or what they hear directly from building level administrators or teachers themselves.
And they do query them. The academic administrators query the teachers, and 6 through 12, they have a lot of curriculum days where the teachers get to go in and work on what they need to in regards to the curriculum, whether it's a delivery of a certain piece or they're reconfiguring the understanding of what they're teaching themselves. So the geometry, I was thinking about that, and how much work has gone on with the teachers and understanding the Common Core with the geometry, that piece, or the new framework for social studies. It's huge.
I wanted just to draw attention to really being, that's so impressive to walk around with an iPad and
Oh my
just say,
gosh.
and let that inform. It's not just about the results on paper, it's the results to the students that, before they even see the paper test, and what that does for the process of learning about how to teach or how they learn. So I thought that was really impressive, and the cultural responsiveness, I can envision that not necessarily being focused on E&L, but
Yes.
poverty, about
Yes,
all
everybody
other
is.
kinds of elements, and how that will enrich our teaching and the buy-in of our community into what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so all of this training and what the administrators do to bring it to the parents so they understand how they can participate in it, it's a great circle, and I think we deserve to be proud about that.
I will add that Dr. Wood's correct. When I sit down with her to decide what we're going to put in the PDP, we go through page by page the goal document. What all of you said you were going to do, what all of elementary, middle school, high school, and then the district leadership team says that they're going to do. And from that, we draw out how we can support.
I just want to comment, I heard your quotes on change.
Hmm.
There's a giant challenge on change, and I think, you know, as a person who started on the board in 1988, you know, this is much more dynamic.
Oh, yes.
The atmosphere, the culture that we're in than it ever was back then.
Absolutely.
And you know, the constancy of the need to stay updated and the desire of people to do that, no matter where they are in their career, I think is really an outstanding tribute to the connection and the commitment to kids. And without programs like this, which have such a reputation, well-earned reputation over time, I think we would be struggling. And I'm sure it's still a struggle, but it's one thing to acknowledge that there's change. It's another to deal with it and to help people through it, and to see our teachers and see our administrators wanting to deal with it up front and to stay ahead of that curve as much as we can. So I'm glad you provide the vehicle to that, to be able to deal with that. It's really, really important here.
We're really fortunate that we have a professional development department.
are.
We're really fortunate. Other schools don't have that. I do want to mention that any of the filming is the private closed circuit piece. No one is allowed to see it but the classroom teacher. I just want to emphasize that, you know. That's why we're paying for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. So we'll transition from PD to more programmatic delivery models. Mrs. Smilard and Dr. Wood again will talk about AIS RTI. One of the things that over the years, and certainly they'll do a better job of clarifying, that oftentimes people use those things interchangeable, but yet they're actually very different. But yet the outcome is still the same. How do we best support kids and intervene when we identify areas of struggle? So part of we're doing more of the merging versus the separation of the two, and subsequently that's why you see we do the AIS RTI plan as a singular piece of it, because it does have at the end ultimately a singular focus prior to the next presentation, which we will talk about as the special education plan. So if you kind of almost think about it in that continuum, it makes more sense to you when you think about it from that progression, so to speak. So Mrs. Smilard.
Okay, so to review, AIS, Academic Intervention Services, are from a mandate in the year 2000 for students who were deemed to be at risk of not meeting the state standards. The support can be provided through a small group, an additional teacher in the classroom providing additional instruction during content instruction, can be supplemental, can also take place during the actual core instruction. So students are identified as requiring AIS through the New York State assessments. That's one of our primary ways of identifying students, but we use a multiple criteria point process for identifying students who require AIS, which includes teacher recommendation and grades, our Fontes and Pinnell assessments, our common assessments for ELA and reading and writing, and also our math assessments. So we look at a variety of assessments to determine who qualifies for additional support. Response to intervention is the process, the best practice process that we go through to really hone in on what the weak area is in terms of skill development. So we have the 5 components of reading instruction, of reading development and instruction. We have different components of math, computation, application, process, and then we have different pieces of written expression of writing. And RTI looks to identify where exactly the skill breakdown is in one or more of those areas, and then how are we going to remediate those areas before a small gap becomes an insurmountable crevice or a student requires special education. Now, sometimes that is the outcome, but we need to exhaust all of our pre-referral, we call them, interventions through either AIS, a mandated support, or RTI, which is the process we go through to ensure that students are getting the correct targeted support. With RTI, we have more frequent progress monitoring. AIS is a quarterly. And so the services can look different, but in a perfect world, which is where we're heading, of course, is to use the RTI process to provide all of our AIS and support services for students before they reach the special education role. Okay. And again, we're working on improving our practices with RTI and AIS. We're always looking at research-based interventions that we can implement, innovative practices. We're using technology more to support students, and we're always looking to improve our progress monitoring because that is so tricky, but also the crux of whether or not we're providing correct intervention. Were there
Question?
Yes, yes,
Okay, so about 2 years ago, we looked at state test results.
yes.
And we all knew, and everybody across the state, that there was a much higher percentage of ones and twos, and we made a decision to really focus on, obviously, the ones and the low twos, and we felt the high twos would sort of improve over time. Do you feel that strategy worked, or is that something we'd want to talk to as we look at
Well, I think, Bob,
test data?
if we want to, I'm glad you brought that point up, because one of the things, and you see it in both the lavender purple slides, one of the things that we do here is looking at multiple measures. Because quite frankly, with you, there are kids who can score a 1 that we have many other markers are saying that this may not be the best situation for the kids. And conversely, we have kids who score a 2 or higher, and we're like, wow, okay, that's interesting because the other markers aren't showing. So I say that because one of the things that we can't have this be is the proverbial check in and never check out. And the second part of it too, and I think this is the biggest piece that we still struggle with, even from a societal perspective, is that our objective is to support kids, not to label kids, not to stigmatize kids. And try to do it in such a way that we don't have a significant adverse impact on their abilities to engage in other curricular activities otherwise. And that gets trickier, particularly at the high school level, when scheduling becomes a big part of it, and there's only a finite number of times and hours and periods to do certain things. But the multiple measure piece of it is a big part of it, because in fact, we've had years where the data is coming from the state so late that if we were to wait for that, we would never identify kids purely based upon the state data measures. So that's a big piece, and it's important for us to. However, with that same note, the state data actually provides us some very good information too, and that's the reason why we almost create that litmus test between the different data sets and seeing, are we within reason in our thinking or not, based upon where the data points are coming in. So it's not one more important than the other. It's the collection of the evidence, the body, if you will, that gives us a better feel on, be it teacher recommendation, be it different local or state assessment data points, that gives us a real feel on the students. And it's an ongoing process. I mean, some cases we're absolutely right on target. Some cases we're not on target. And the question is, when we're not, what do we do to ensure as the student progresses through the system that we're constantly providing supports? Even if the board recall, some years ago, we identified that even at high school level, we were just talking today, that we still provide some reading supports in the 9th grade, because the curricular shift is so extreme when it comes to literacy for certain kids that we still need to support them. People think, reason why, because we know the realities of what kids face as they make those huge curricular leaps. So it's an ongoing process piece of it. And the dynamic nature of this is that, we know what the mandated aspects of it are, and what we're trying to do is say, yes, we're satisfied the mandated aspects of it, but more important, how do we ensure that we're supporting the students? And, Mrs. Smilard is probably, we have also engaged, you probably want to talk about it even on the special ed side, things like the Read 180 and Systems 44 and different programs that are much more dynamic and supportive for kids than we've had in the past. And that will continue to evolve in the same way as you heard the last two presentations. As things evolve, as technology presents itself, as digital content, online resources presents themselves, we need to adapt those things to the system as well.
Any other questions?
Michelle, when we notify parents if their child, based on the state test for AIS, when you notify the parents, that their child may need that service, in addition to, notifying them, what other supports are we able to provide to the parents, in how they can reinforce certain strategies at home? Because as parents, you hear this, you're like, what do I do? I know my child's struggling, but I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to reinforce what they're learning through AIS, or, of course, talking to other teachers to figure out how their child's being monitored. What would you recommend?
What would I personally recommend?
Yeah,
Or what is being...
what's being done? Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, what's being done? Sorry.
What's being done is that the teacher and certainly the AIS provider should be having a conversation, typically at that first parent-teacher conference, about what strategies and methodologies they are using, and then teachers are always providing parents with suggestions for how they can work at home. And certainly the expectation is not that the parents are going to then provide another 6 hours of instruction to their children, but strategies that they can implement that will help their student enjoy the subject more, understand their homework more. The parent is really the support person to support the school and the student, but not expected to be providing direct instruction. And for reading, of course, I think most people know that reading with your child is the number one strategy to improve reading skills.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Mylod. You're not going anywhere.
I'm not going. You're not rid of me yet.
So she's going to, the continuum continues.
Yes, the continuum continues, and we've exhausted our academic intervention services. We've gone through the RTI process, which we don't just use for reading. We also use for math, writing, behavioral challenges, speech and language. We really try to implement that model with all students before we move on to a CSE referral. Special education is governed first by the federal government IDEA legislation. The states then take IDEA and they adopt their own regulations, which in New York State we have the Part 200 regulations, which are actually more strict than the federal guidelines. Then the Board of Education adopts policy and ensures that the district is following all of the above regulations. The cornerstone of special education then is the IEP, the Individualized Education Plan. The purpose of the IEP is to ensure that students have full access to the Common Core Learning Standards within the least restrictive environment, and that, of course, starts with the classroom, with push-in services, resource support. Those are the least restrictive services to ensure that students are in the classroom, receiving that instruction, being provided with the appropriate modifications and accommodations and explicit instruction. Now, the process going from RTI to special education consideration starts with a referral from a parent or the school designee, which is the CSE chairperson. A physician or some outside agency or a staff member may request a referral to the special education committee, in which case that would go back to the instructional support team for review. But a parent at any time can refer a child, and so can the designated staff member. From that time, the parent receives a prior written notice. They then have to sign consent that they agree to have their child evaluated. Once that consent is received by the school district, we have 60 days to complete the evaluation and hold what we call an eligibility determination. And that's where we have the Committee on Special Education, which includes a chairperson who is an administrator, and the school psychologist, at least one teacher of the child, the special education teacher, any other people who have completed evaluations, the parent may invite a friend or a support person, and then the child if the student is in 8th grade or above. Because one of the critical pieces of the IEP as we progress through the school years is to have that student be involved in their own program. The board then approves the recommendation, and the district has 30 days to implement the program. We typically ask parents to sign consent for the program right at the meeting so we can implement right away, because at that point we all know that the child needs intervention right away. Every year, the student's program is reviewed. We have an annual review meeting where we review to make sure the student is making progress, has met or is on track to meet their goals by the end of the year, review services for the next year, and make any updates to that IEP. And then every 3 years, we have a reevaluation. And in that situation, again, parents are provided with a written notice. They have to give consent for their child to be formally assessed. We have a reevaluation meeting, and we determine again whether or not the student is eligible or if the student can be declassified at that time. That is always our goal. The Continuum of Services, as I said before, regular classroom with consultant teacher, co-teaching, or resource room would be the least restrictive environment. Of course, the student has access to individual modifications and testing accommodations, but they have full access to Common Core rigorous instruction. We then move into our special class programming. If you had a chance to look at the plan, you'll notice that we offer quite a variety of special programs. They're not all called special class. That's a little change that I made in the plan this year, because we don't have just full 9-period-a-day special class settings, with the exception of our FSD, functional skills development programs. And students in those programs, we are always looking to mainstream. So most students go to lunch. Some of them are able to go to special area classes, and they are provided with opportunities to participate in general education, extracurricular activities, athletics, clubs. You know, we have students who go to bowling club with adult support. So as much integration as possible. So we have for special programs our Connections program, which is part self-contained and then part supported in the regular classroom, and that's for students with moderate to mild autism who really require an intensive specialized program. That programming goes from kindergarten through 8th grade. After that, at this point, students go into the regular high school setting, again with special education support, and that's actually an area that we're looking to see what we can do with our 9th grade students, because that transition from 8th grade to 9th grade we're finding to be very difficult, given that they've spent some time in self-contained and then they're going into a high school and then again the 11 through 12 building. The other special program we have is BESD. That is a K-12 program, and another significant change within the special ed plan is that those students are now mainstreamed in elementary school. We had a self-contained program for those students, and now we've moved to a fully inclusive with a lot of aid support, teacher really functioning as a consultant, somebody who will go into the classroom and work with the classroom teachers, support the aides, but then also be able to pull students out if they need to be in a separate location, if they're having a bad day, or if they need some resource support or special class instruction if they have significant reading issues. Then, of course, we have our functional skills development class, which you're aware of, and we have an autism strand at the elementary school, and then we have our strand that's for students with developmental disabilities. Some of them have autism, but they're higher functioning. The students in the FSD program are working towards a New York State alternate assessment and not the regular New York State assessments. Those students will go on to earn the SAC, the Skills and Achievement Commencement Credential, a non-diploma option. Students in our Connections program, we are still working on a local or Regents diploma. Some of those students will probably earn a CDOS, which is the work readiness certificate, not a diploma, but teaching skills, teaching students employability skills, setting them up with internships, and sometimes they stay through 21 and remain in Heather Green's program, which is the Community Skills Development Program. And this all culminates with exit from public school. So I included the last slide, our exit information for students 14 to 21. You will see that our students earned, this is our students with active IEPs, we had 7 Regents diploma with advanced designation or honors. We had 18 Regents diplomas, 11 local diplomas, And the local diploma means that you can get a 55 on the Regents exam, and we now have the compensatory option, which means that if a student gets a 45 on a science or a history Regents, they can get a 65 on a different Regents to compensate and equal out to that 55. That's something new that the Board of Regents put in place almost a year and a half ago. We had 4 students exit with a CDOS, and when I say exit, they walked across the stage, they earned their CDOS, and then the CDOS is the Career Development and Occupational Studies Certificate. Career Development and Occupational Studies. They have to participate in 216 work-related hours. It is rather rigorous for those students. They have a career plan. It's signed off by the principal. We have a really exceptional program here that we're very proud of that Christy Drinkwater runs, and it's the Christy Drinkwater and Suzanne Haskell, our transition coordinator, have presented at numerous conferences. We've really been seen as the model for that. They do great work. So 4 students exited not to return, probably had a job and are now working in the community. 9 went to Heather Green's program. Even though they earn the CDOS, they are still eligible to remain in school until the age of 21, or if they earn a Regents or local diploma. We did not have, we also had 4 students who had previously earned either an IEP diploma, which is no longer an option, but they may have earned it 3 or 4 years ago. So they either earned that or a CDOS last year and aged out, so left at 21. And then we had 16 students that were declassified. That's between the ages of 14 and 21, but I like to put that on here because I think it's important for you to know that we do declassify students in high school. It's quite frequent, and those students do not come up on our Regents local diploma information, but they are students who did have an IEP for possibly even 10 years and were successful. So those are successes that we want to celebrate.
So, Michelle,
Yes.
excuse me. So those students probably did get a Regents diploma?
No, they did. They're just not in her count as special
Right.
ed students getting a Regents
Right.
diploma. They're in a regular
They graduated
Regents
with a
count.
Regents or Advanced Regents diploma,
Yeah.
but they
But in
were not
sort of
included in
regular-
my number
Right.
Yeah.
because
But that's a success for you.
Yeah.
that's right. That's why
Absolutely.
I put that there. And then the last thing is we did have 8 students drop out between the ages of 16 and 20. And I followed up with the psychologists, and I said, I want to know each student, why they dropped out, and at least 7 of them, it was directly related to mental health issues. So I can assure you that our counselors, our special ed teachers, and our psychologists do everything they can to keep those students in school, and it's something that we will always work to improve upon.
Michelle,
Yes.
I'd like to ask you a question. I probably shouldn't ask this question, but, so early on, you talked about a goal of putting these students in least restrictive services.
Yes.
So give me a feel for how many parents push back on that. I mean, do we have parent pushback or say, I want
Sometimes.
more restrictive services?
Sometimes we have parents who request more restrictive services because this public school can be very stressful. And we often have students who hold it together very well at school with support, and then they go home and they unleash it on, and all of us who are parents know what that's like. And so we really work hard with those parents to help them see the benefit of keeping their child in the public school setting where they are going to receive the best education. As soon as they leave public school and go into a BOCES or a day treatment, and that's not to say that those programs aren't great, but the focus becomes very different. It's very much more on management, and they just don't have the same caliber of teachers that we have within our district to provide the education that our students need and
That was
deserve.
exactly why I was asking the question. I do have a couple students who are on the autism
Yep.
spectrum who parents were having more difficulty at home
Yep.
dealing, and I wondered if there was pushback there.
Sometimes, but
Yeah.
I think we work things out pretty well.
Thank you.
At the last year's NISBA convention, there was one of the presentations from a school district in Long Island, and what they had found is that they had evolved to a lot of centralized programs that were in the upper part of the triangle. And they realized it's costing them a lot, and, was it really effective? And they put together a campaign to sort of move more opportunities to the bottom part of the pyramid.
Yes.
And they found out it wasn't just dollars driven, it was more driven by, you want to do this. There was significant resistance from some parents, but they realized just the ability to have these kids go to the school that the kids in their neighborhood go to was a great confidence builder. And so the question to you is, do you feel like we have the right balance in the pyramid?
I just talked about this morning. I think we have a good balance. There does seem to be a trend with especially late middle and high school, again with the mental health and students who need more intensive services, for instance, within a day treatment setting. And that is one of our goals in the special ed department this year, to look at, is there a way we can provide some creative programming in districts so that those students don't have to go out and ride the bus for an hour a day. We're always looking at improving and increasing our programs if we have the right number and need.
So would that be something that you would look to the sort of mental health services program, or some other that's specialized?
Yeah, when you look at this pyramid here, and you look at the yellow, just imagine if we had a circle that goes over the yellow, the brownish, and the bottom of the red, and call it something Shen, because right now our options are BOCES program or some kind of outside day treatment program, and all the day treatment program, the kids on the bus for long periods of time. Yeah. That alone is tremendous to deal with. And so that's the piece, but we're trying to do that, though, that doesn't come across as out of sight, out of mind. In other words, if we do a program like this and it's a high school age student and the program is not housed in the high school, we don't want people to have the impression that, oh, this kid is no longer in high school. Because we know the reality of it is that kid, back to Michelle, she mentioned the word high school can be stressful, not in a stress that is whatever, it's just that when you think about certain students with certain disability, even the transitions alone and the school day can create uncertainty and uneasiness. So that's where we have this, Michelle was talking about this morning, this circle. We're trying to figure out what's that looks like in terms of something we can do here that still provides that experiential piece of it that Mr. Casey talked about, kids going to school and part of the district, feel a part of the district, the curriculum connection back to the general curriculum, but yet something that recognizes that because of be it mental health issues, anxieties, and some of the things that come with it, that we can create a situation where the transition aren't as plentiful as the typical high school student, if you want to use that for an example. That's the piece that we're trying to figure out. Where's that sweet spot? And how do we most effectively do that? Exactly. So how do we most effectively do that is something that we need to figure out. Again, because at the end of the day, we want every kid to have an experience that, we use the word sometimes enjoy, but an experience that's expected for them. And that's the piece where Michelle is touring around trying to figure out what's that sweet spot. And back to Mr. Casey's point, the reason why I asked, if we get a lot of pushback, and we know that it comes to the board level, it's when people want to go from in the middle to the top. Yeah. And we're always saying, okay, I hear you, but let's make sure why are we going from the middle to the top? What's the motivating factor? And so we always have to decipher between those things as well in terms of, is it something we're not providing that can be provided better and differently? Yes, no. Is it something that, are there some other factors at play that we need to take in consideration as we make these decisions as well?
Thank you, Michelle.
Kelly, before you change that, just want to point out, thank you, Michelle, you'll be all set. As the board noticed, and I spoke about it last week, you'll see more of what I call the storyboard, one-page kind of things. Yeah, and kudos to Kelly. One of the things that this process does, and even actually Mrs. Mylod is probably the best test case example of this, because she presented two pretty comprehensive type plans in a way that's very conversant, which is important. And the only way that happens is by this model forces us as administrators to really put our head into those things and not just simply repeating, regurgitating information. And so I'm bringing this because and Kelly will get those things and try to turn in some graphics. Because I think it's important it's easier for us to grab this. You know, certainly as a board member, I hope that you walk out, yeah, no, I do understand the special education plan now. I do understand. That's what we want. We want you as board members, we want the public, we want the community to understand that enough to have an appreciation of what we're trying to do. And if they have more questions, at least now it can be an intelligent dialogue and not a dialogue based upon misinformation or assumptions that's out there. And so this is a model that we're moving towards. So you'll see more and more of this. Yes, occasionally you'll see the 20 slide presentations for someone who we didn't get to yet. But you're going to see more and more of this because I think it lends to a better understanding. Again, have the presenter being much more conversant than just simply regurgitating information. So kudos to Kelly for putting this stuff together and for the folks tonight.
So we'll move forward with action items. The reserve allocation, you may recall, we discussed those in our last meeting in August, but apparently we didn't move forward with the resolution, which our auditors are looking for. So the resolution reads, recommend that the Board of Education approve increases in workers' compensation reserve, the employee benefit accrued liability reserves in the amount of $110,533 and $346,000 respectively, and a decrease in the taxiary review of $590,708. Could I have a motion to accept that? Todd, a second. Jim, any questions? All those in favor? We also have 4 sets of plans well presented tonight, and so can I have a motion for approval of the technology integration plan? Bob, second. Mary, questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. Approval of the professional development plan? Motion Todd, second. Jim? All those in favor? Approval of the AIS and RTI plan? Christina? Bob, second. Any questions? All those in favor? And finally, approval of the special education plan. Christina? Jim? All those in favor? Motion carries. Before we get a motion for adjournment, I do want to point out a couple things on the schedule. As we mentioned earlier tonight, our next business meeting is Tuesday, October 13th. And you'll note on the schedule it says on Tuesday, October 29th, there's a study session. If I get my act together, I'm going to propose that on the 29th, on that Tuesday night, we meet at 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock in public session to discuss our communications recommendations. That Mary and Jim were on a committee, and we've had some additional discussion on that, but it's something that I think we didn't, we left open as we retreated, and I think it's important that we as a board, collectively decide how we want to move forward on communications, what areas we want to focus on, what areas are maybe change, because it's a clear goal of this board to communicate better, especially with the public, with parents, and with the community. And it's one of those things we need to look at it at some time. It's not something that we need to, that fits within the open meetings law. It's the right thing to talk about communications in an open meeting session. So I'm going to propose that. I hope to get something written by the end of the week that we can look at, and we would move that to 27th. Okay, yeah, that's right.
Not 29th,
13 and 14 don't equal 29. That's right, October 27th. Okay. So with that being said, could I have a motion for adjournment? Todd, second. Jim, all those in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much, and thank you to our presenters tonight. Very, very good tonight.